I'm 3 hours and 12 minutes into this experiment already. Wondering if I did the right thing, but I think it'll be helpful to you. I'll tell you more as we get going. Let's get started. I've committed to mow this entire tower property, roughly 5 acres. The exact measurement I'll show right here from Google Maps, but I've committed to mow it with this 4-foot rotary cutter from tractorbasics.com. And I've done that for a couple of reasons. I want you to be able to see the cut quality. I want you to be able to kind of see how the mower works. I want to see how the mower works. And I also want to just kind of address the whole concept of using a subcompact tractor to mow rough weeds and brush commercially. Is it practical? And so that's what we're kind of addressing here. As I mentioned first, I'm 3 hours and 12 minutes into this project. I did that yesterday afternoon and evening. You're seeing a drone view right now that I haven't seen yet as I'm talking about this. So I don't know if I'm half done. I think I probably, from a time standpoint, am about half done. I've mowed a lot of these areas here, the trimming, some of this more difficult, time-consuming areas. But when I look at the overall area from the ground here, I think I'm probably not half done. So we'll see how long it's going to take. But again, I'm 3 hours, 12 minutes invested, and you can see what I've done so far. I filled up with diesel before I came back today, and thanks to my handy-dandy meter that I now have on my fancy electric pump, I used exactly 4 gallons, maybe just 3.98 or something, but essentially 4 gallons even. So that's roughly 1 1/4, close to 1 1/3 gallons per hour, which is exactly what we tested on the finish mower. I think that's consistent. By the way, for those of you that are Kubota fans, the BX did indeed use less fuel for the same test run. Let me talk about the experience so far. First, let's talk about cut quality. You can see from this drone view that the cut quality is not perfect. It's exactly the same cut quality that I have seen with any of these 4-foot rotary cutters on a subcompact tractor. Any single spindle cutter is going to have a hard time around the right-hand wheel, right? The way the blade spins, it's going forward when it comes past the grass that's already been knocked down by the tractor. It doesn't do anything to pick that grass back up. The left-hand wheel it does a better job on. Well, why am I setting apart a subcompact tractor? Well, it's because since it's so narrow, and since the tires are relatively wide compared to the overall width of the tractor, the overall proportion of the grass that gets knocked down in front of that cutter, especially on the right-hand side, is pretty high. I've been handling this so far by overlapping a little bit. I have not overlapped the entire tractor tire width when I'm mowing, because that will take my 4-foot cut all the way down to 3 foot or less, and I didn't think that was fair for the overall time test. But I have to overlap a little bit. If I just drive right back over the same, the uncut part, I'm pushing grass out to the side and for sure not cutting it. So I've had to overlap a little, probably about half of the rear tire width, right? I'm overlapping. And when you can see areas where I've mowed back and forth, you can see that it's basically every 8 foot that I'm having the grass that's not cut hardly at all. Again, it's just a symptom of a single spindle, and it's magnified because it's only a subcompact tractor, not very wide. You make a lot of tracks. You know, if you could mow even with an 8-foot single spindle or a 7-foot single spindle, you wouldn't have near as many tire tracks, right? Hey, this is the time warp miracle of video editing. Yeah, a couple things I want to share. First is you can see what it looks like several days after. This would be a little over a week. This is like 9 days after we shot the mowing video. The other thing that I want to share is I got poison ivy all over my neck from this project. And it might not be obvious to you how that might happen, but that mower is stirring up those poison ivy oils and it's just throwing it up against the back of my neck. and then, you know, it spreads and it's got all the way around my neck. Now, it's happened twice. I think, even though I may or may not get paid for it from this company, I'm gonna have to get back here and spray this poison ivy. It drives me nuts to get that all over my neck. You can see here from the mowing that, yeah, some of it's popped back up. It really doesn't look as bad as I thought it would. And as I've said in this rest of this video here, if I came back right now and mowed it now and kind of straddled those areas, it'd look great. I also want to tell you about the ISOTunes Father's Day sales. There's actually two of them. One of them is TTWT specific. And I do want to talk about this new model. This is an AM/FM Bluetooth over-the-ear receiver. It's called the Defender AM/FM Bluetooth. It's easy to switch between several different modes here. It's got an AM mode, an FM mode, and a Bluetooth mode for what you're listening to. You can accept calls by pressing the power button to answer a call. Doesn't matter which mode you're in, everything just works really nice on this. I don't use enough FM or AM radio in general to know how the reception is. I know that I've got a lot of stations that I can receive from here, but I can't, you know, when I was growing up, I listened to more FM radio. I was able to say, compare one receiver to another to say how it received some of my favorite stations, but I don't have enough to help with that, but it does get, you know, fairly decent reception, I can say that. There are 4 models in the sale. This is one of them. Another one is the Free Aware. So that it has no cables, just goes into the ear, and yet it has this aware mode so that you can hear folks talking right next to you. It only blocks the noise when something is really loud, right? I mean, you can snap your fingers right by your ears and you'll hear it block, or hit something with a hammer, or tractor noise, shotgun, anything like that. Pro 2.0 is another one, and that's got a cable. And the benefit of the cable, yeah, it annoys you a little on your neck sometimes, but you're not gonna lose it if you happen to get brushed with a limb or something. It's not going to fall out like that. And the last one is the Link 2.0. That's an over-the-ear model. You can see all of these models, shop.isotunes.com/TTWT-20. It's 20% off of these 4 models. If you're interested in the other Father's Day sale, go to the same link. Link's in the description. Go to the same link and you can get a chance to buy one and get your second pair for 50% off. So if you're wanting 2 pairs, that's a better deal. If you're wanting only one and you want one of these 4, this is a better deal. Choose whichever you want, but traditionally the Father's Day sales at ISOTunes are the best you're gonna find. If you're watching this after Father's Day, use code TTWT for the standard 10% off of ISOTunes products. Let's talk a bit about this cutter. It is a 4-foot rotary cutter from TractorBasics.com. By the way, you get a 10% discount with code TTWT at TractorBasics.com. And this cutter is an entry-level cutter. It is quite inexpensive. And while this cutter is basic in some ways, it has some of the features of the slightly more advanced King cutter models, for example. Now, from the basic standpoint, it does not have a slip clutch. Now, there is a slip clutch option. It's an upgrade, and slip clutches are better than the shear bolt. I haven't sheared a bolt yet, so I guess it's not horrible. And with the soft start PTOs that you have on these Deere tractors, you're not going to shear them just engaging them like some of the early electric PTOs would just jar it when it engaged it, and you could easily shear the pin right there. But this one is shear bolt. But from the higher end feature standpoint, I've got my top link leaned way back just to illustrate this. This is a flex hitch. And if you look at the entry level King cutter or other box store mowers, they are fixed here. And if you ever see one in the field where a guy has actually used it, these 2 bars will be bent, because there's no place for them to give. And as soon as your tractor front tires go up or your rear tires go into a ditch, it forces something to give. Well, that's what this flex hitch is all about. This mower's fully quick hitch compatible, and it works perfectly. In the proper hole, everything about the quick hitch is perfect. So, to be quite frank, of all the TractorBasics.com attachments I've tried, this one is the one that has pleased me the most, right? I'm actually quite happy with this as an entry-level attachment. Remember, the whole goal of Tractor Basics is not necessarily to be the highest end feature of all the attachments that you can buy anywhere. It's to try to be a cost-effective attachment for someone who doesn't use it very often, doesn't have to have the highest end features, but wants to have something that'll get the job done and do it well. This fits the category perfectly, okay? I'm not trying to oversell it. I'm just trying to tell you that this one directly fits the category. Now, let's look back here. The way the rear gauge wheel is adjusted is easy to handle. I really like how this is done. This is a better approach than what I have seen on some of the box store cutters. Now, because of all my hydraulics here, I've chose to use the Tractor PTO Link today. I haven't used that in a long time. It's not something that I recommend for everything, but it really made it easier for me to connect the PTO today because I was having trouble getting between the quick hitch, getting all down in here to get my PTO connected. I know it sounds like a commercial, but since I don't use it all the time, I'm gonna mention it today, and it really did make connecting this easier. TractorPTOLink.com, again, use code TTWT for that. The weather was especially hot yesterday evening. It's a little cooler today, but notice I'm shaded right now. Well, a few years ago, I would have never believed that it made that much of a difference, but the canopy that I've got is really helping on this particular task. Mowing out here in the hot sun, it's very, very helpful. The other aspect of it is that I have a canopy fan here, and that fan, it's surprisingly like air conditioning. I mean, it really does help. But it has another impact, especially when mowing. A lot of times when you're mowing, you run over stuff and you have this like pollen and everything coming right up at you. This fan kind of creates a curtain. It's a really neat effect that keeps some of this pollen and some of the light seeds and stuff, it keeps them out of your face, right? That fan blows right down in front of you and keeps everything spread out. I had no idea that a canopy and a fan would so dramatically change the usage of a tractor. Now, I've had before just a canopy without a fan, and that can get still really hot because you basically just roast right under there. But that fan makes an enormous amount of difference, especially if you get a little sweat worked up. That fan really does cool you down. I mean, the moving air helps a lot. Remember, I've had 3 hours and 12 minutes to think about all this stuff, so there's just been a lot of stuff. A lot of these products that, well, I mean, again, you may be seeing it as a commercial, but these are products that are genuinely making this job palatable. The next one on the list is the seat. I've got this improved seat from trackseats.com, right? It's specially made and fitted for the 1 Series tractors. Just a couple weeks ago, I spent all day, actually 2 days in a row, driving a 1 Series in Colorado that was straight off the dealer's lot. And by the time I was done with the second day, I had had enough 1 Series tractors for quite some time. I mean, it really was wearing on my back. This field here is rough. As you'll see, it's rough as can be. Some of it I'm causing myself. Yeah, I got stuck just a little bit yesterday evening. You can see the spot where I got stuck here, and yeah, it's still wet there. But it's rough because of ruts. It's rough because of a lot of other things. And this seat is really helping. So again, trackseats.com, I would highly recommend it. It's got this weight-centric suspension here. It's not an air seat, but it gives that air feel. It is very nice. The same seat that's on the highest end Deere mowers, and I think on the highest end Ferris mowers as well. It's not that it's a unique seat, but it's unique for the 1025R. When I first started with my 1025R, I tried to do mowing jobs similar to this, maybe not quite as big as this 5-acre job, commercially. I tried to bid on these jobs and get the jobs and you know, do a good job for the customer. Well, I really had 2 problems. Number one is the cut quality with a subcompact tractor and a rotary cutter, of course. Or even a flail's it may cut a little bit better than this, but it's still gonna have issue where it's not gonna be able to pick up that grass behind the tractor. But the bigger issue is the time it takes to cut, right? I mean, this is a a very time-consuming approach to only go 4 foot, or you might say 3 to 3.5 foot each pass. It's very time-consuming. If you're doing this on your own property, it is the least expensive way to mow by far, right? This mower is very cost-effective. You already have your tractor. This is a good way to get a small patch of weeds and brush mowed once or twice a year. There's no question about that. And if you're not happy with the cut quality, wait a week or so and go back over and mow it again. That's fine. If you're trying to do this commercially, you're competing against a 10 to 15 foot flex wing mower that gets the job done much, much faster. I think maybe in a future video we might actually show a 6 foot single spindle mowing this whole thing, see how long that takes. Maybe even our 10 foot flex wing, see how long that takes on a different mowing. It would be interesting just to compare the times. But it takes a lot less time with a larger tractor and a bigger mower. The ride quality, of course, is a lot better when you get the bigger tires, the longer wheelbase. And they can do it more cost competitively. They can use an older machine. For instance, the amount of money that we put in a subcompact, if someone is mowing alone, they can put that same amount of money in a 1970s 100 horsepower tractor or 90 horsepower tractor, right? And all they need to do is have 2-wheel drive and a good PTO, and you don't need a whole lot of hydraulics. It's a perfect job for one of those older machines. They spend then a good bit of money on their flex wing mower, and they have a very cost competitive solution for their customers, and they can then mow anything from say 3 to 300 acres if they want to commit to that. So commercially, what I found was somewhere around 2 acres, right? Somewhere around 2 acres I could be competitive, because the bigger machine folks would charge a little more for delivery and setup and all, because they had to have bigger trucks and trailers. And it was painful for them to handle such a small area. But what I find is that when we get over that 2 acre mark, then the size of my machine really begins to hinder my cost effectiveness. That's what we're going to illustrate. For instance, I've already got 4 gallons of fuel. Even with my 3520, 4 gallons of fuel, I wouldn't, even if I'd used twice as much fuel, I think I could have mowed more than twice as much of this property with it. So I would have less expense in fuel, I believe, and certainly less time involved. Right now there's a fad that everybody's really excited about flail mowers. I've shown flail mowers on this channel. I've talked about the advantages. I've tried to talk about some of the disadvantages, but maybe I should go through some of those again. The number one disadvantage to me of a flail is all the moving parts, right? I mean, when you're going through larger brush, you can easily knock one of those hammers off. I've done it. I've hit a rock, right? If I hit a rock, I can knock one of those hammers off and then I can lose it. It's much less robust in very tough conditions. The second disadvantage is the initial cost of the mower. So the flail mower costs a lot more than what you're going to find for an inexpensive rotary cutter. Third disadvantage of a flail is you just can't mow as big a material. You can take this machine, even though it's rated, 1.5 to 2 inches, something like that. You could run this over a 3-inch. It's going to bark and complain at you, but it'll get the job done, right? You won't be able to take a typical flail mower over that kind of a tree. It just won't be able to handle it. Now there are some higher end, tougher flail mowers, similar to what we have on our Mini X, right? We have that Mongo Attachments flail mulcher, and it's much more heavy duty. It can handle some bigger stuff, but typical flail mower that you're buying for a subcompact tractor is just not able to handle that heavier stuff. So you got 3 disadvantages right there. The number one advantage is cut quality, and it is a lot better, but it's not perfect because it's still behind the tractor. We have found that our Ventrac flail that is in front of the tractor, it does a superb job cutting because it hits the grass before the tires do. But anytime we're running behind the tractor, we just simply don't have that advantage. And that's a shame. Yeah, I've talked about that in other episodes as well, how I wish we could be mowing on the front. I've put a lot of effort into that. Still don't have it accomplished yet, but I'm continuing to work on it. Another advantage of a flail, I think, is that you can run a slightly larger flail. I can run a 5-footer on this machine. It seems to handle it from a power standpoint pretty well. It pulls it harder, I would say, than the 4-foot, but it can handle it. It's easier to turn because it doesn't stick back as far from a tractor. I think there's some advantages there. Overall, if you're just mowing a small area and you don't need to mow it, but say once or twice a year, you might get by just fine with one of these rotary cutters. I did so for years before I got a flail, and I was very happy with it. I was quite frankly shocked at what I could do with a subcompact tractor, as some of our earlier mowing episodes have shown. Summary here is, don't get caught up in the fad, right? Get what you need, what you can afford, that'll solve your specific problems. You don't have to go with the crowd. We're just over 4 hours into it now, and I've got a lot of the trimming done. Got some long straight throughs here that'll really make it go a little bit faster. It's reminded me of a couple other things though. The hydraulic oil temperature is up to 240, and that's where it ran all yesterday as well. My sense is that PTO attachments, even when the tractor's not physically pulling real hard, but PTO attachments seem to cause high hydraulic oil temperatures. Unfortunately, there's not a gauge that you can buy that's easy to install. We had to custom make this. This gauge is custom, and Hydros Plus is considering making one. It's on his list, making one that would be easy to install, and I really hope he does. I'd love to see that. Because it is enlightening. I'm not pulling this tractor hard at all. It's handling it well. I'm not seeing the RPM drop hardly at all. The mower is a perfect size for it, maybe even a tad bit too small, right? If they made a 54-inch, I think it might be even better for this tractor. But I'm not pulling the tractor hard at all. I'm not going too fast. I'm on flat ground. There is no reason why we should be overheating this tractor, but we are overheating the hydraulic oil. Temperature outside today is probably 82, something like that. It's not extremely hot. And I do notice that over time, anytime we mow, the screen up here gets filled up. But I watch the water temperature for that, right? And so I've been watching the water temperature. It has not overheated. Today, it did overheat once yesterday. Not overheat, it just got a little hotter than normal. It will eventually overheat. And not only do you need to clean this screen, you need to open the hood and pull the removable screen out and clean it. You need to do that with the engine off so that it doesn't suck these seeds and weeds and stuff right on in there. This is one negative to the hood guard, is that it's hard to reach in here. So I need to find a stick or something that I can stick down in there and get that cleaned off a little bit. Remember that the 1025R actually has a small oil cooler, and to my knowledge, no other subcompact tractor does. I'm not for sure on that. I know the Kubota does not. I know that several of the other major brands do not have oil coolers. The Kubota, for example, has a plastic fan that rotates with the main drive shaft that kind of just blows air on the whole transmission, transaxle housing. And it's easy for those to get sticks up in them and tear those fan blades off, and you don't even know it. And who knows how well it works, right? None of these tractors have oil temperature gauges, as I was talking, so you don't really know. That's why I wish there were oil temperature gauges, but then as a result of me seeing it get hot, even with a stock tractor, remember this is not Johnny X, this is purely stock. I think the point is that we need to get the improved hydraulic cooler. Hydros Plus sells a hydraulic cooler for the front. It takes up a good bit of space in there, makes it a little harder to get to your battery. But in that case, I don't see the oil temperatures going above 160, okay? No matter how hard I pull it, and that's even on Johnny X. I've seen this with the stock tractor getting too hot in the hydraulic oil area every time. Ever since I've had this gauge on here, I've seen it. Doesn't matter whether I have the Summit kit plugged in or not. In fact, I think it stays a little bit cooler with the Summit kit because the Summit kit's a big aluminum block and it dissipates a lot of heat. According to my stopwatch, we are 4 hours and 7 minutes into the mowing. I paused it here, but I'm going to keep going, and we'll see how long it takes to finish. It may go faster now than we expect. I've got most of the trimming done. We'll just see how that goes. Since I was using the stopwatch app to keep track of all this time, I decided to use lap timers to start with. I don't know about you, but I typically start by going all the way around the field multiple times to get it opened up and trimmed a bit. In this case, with such a small mower, I made 5 trips around and did a lot of the trimming there under those trees at the top of the screen at that time. It took me 27.5 minutes to make the first round around the property. It's pretty easy to get discouraged after that. Took 90 minutes, an hour and a half to do all 5 rounds around the outside. But once we got that done, it seems to be going a lot faster now. We're at 5 hours and 40 minutes. I've got just this little piece left. Some of that over there is just too wet. Oh, there's that big rock. At least with this little tractor, I could find the rock before I hit it. I've taken some of these big rocks out, as you've seen in prior episodes, but I hadn't got this one yet. Looks like I'm going to be right at 6 hours, maybe a little bit less. Now, it's so tempting just to try to divide that as acres per hour, but every field is different amount of trimming. But I have heard a lot of people say that you can mow 1 acre per hour with a 1025R and a 4-foot cutter. And I don't think that's a good way to estimate your production. I certainly can't do this field in that amount of time. And I haven't experienced that in the past. So even at $100 an acre, I've got $500 for 6 hours of on-site work. That doesn't count any transportation. Yeah, that's not very good money, to be honest. So I think if you're serious about wanting to do brush mowing commercially, I think you need to look at a bigger rig. I really think an older tractor with a flex link mower is the way to go. But if you're just wanting to mow an acre or 2 or 3 on your own property, and it's okay with you if it takes a little extra time, this is a cost-effective way to do that, right? The total outlay, assuming you already have the tractor for other purposes, the outlay is much less than $2,000 to get yourself a mower that'll get the job done. Christy, the next time I sign up to use a 4-foot mower to mow 5 acres, I think I'm going to let you try it.
No thanks.
Yeah, this was a lot of time, and you've seen us do this same property several times with larger equipment and saw how pleasant it was, right? This, even with the upgrades that we made to the machine, it's not that pleasant. But we got the job done, and we got it done fairly cost effectively, right? I mean, this is a low-cost mower, and it does just as good as a higher-priced mower. So yeah, check it out, tractorbasics.com. Use code TTWT for a 10% discount. 5 hours, 47 minutes, 42 seconds. Obviously, the timing's not perfect, but you get the point. I hope this one was informative. Obviously, we have bigger equipment to get the job done, but I wanted to do the entire thing all at one time with a 4-foot cutter and just see how long it took and kind of discuss the pros and cons. I think we've done that. I think we've done that as well as we can. Hope it was entertaining as well. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on Tractor Time with Tim. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of our God endures forever. I think it's cooling off now that I'm done.